Hi Gemini, welcome to your end of May 2020 General Tarot Update. It's Raina here. Let's see what we got here. Do 3 piles. Well, wow, this card really jumped out here. Been getting that 4 of Wands a lot. Which kind of makes sense given the times we're in. Wow. Very interesting. We have 3 major arcana cards in this particular reading, which signals or are supposed to symbolize, more change, which makes sense. Hello, because the sun is going into your sign, and there's a as I record this, 2 days, and then there's a new moon on the 22nd. So this is your solar return. Gemini, happy birthday. Obviously, most of you will be celebrating your actual birthdays in June, but in the meantime, it certainly is nice to have the sun go into your sign. And the interesting thing about this is that the first card that I picked, which is the heart of the matter, is the death card. Now, the death card connects to Scorpio, and Scorpio connects to the 8th house, which in part is about death. People always think of physical death, which is such a mistake to just limit it to that. Of course, life and death are part of this material world. There are souls being born and souls leaving this world all day, every day. And so, is it possible that you are experiencing someone who has passed away? This is something that has already occurred, by the way. This is not a future situation. Maybe, or maybe you're anticipating the death of somebody and you're preparing for it. But it can be transformation. That certainly is what Scorpio represents, and this is because of one of its rulers, Pluto. And it's a messy business a lot of times, transformation. It doesn't happen seamlessly. It happens sometimes with fits and starts. So one of the main lessons of the death card for me is the idea of going with the flow. You have the ability to do this, Gemini. You're very, you're very mutable. You're very flexible. And so you are open to new possibilities. The only thing that might stop you is the fear of getting too deep, the fear of depth. I said might. I am not saying that all Geminis are the same. Your sun might be in the 8th house or the 12th house and you're totally into mysticism. So don't even go there, because I totally know that. But the sign of Gemini reminds me of a sprite, a fairy, or some kind of butterfly that is very, you're an air sign, but you're just like, you love to sample everything that life has to offer. And it's because you're so curious. It's not just, it could be sometimes a fickleness, but it really is this curiosity and this kind of youthful, eternally youthful spirit. So that's another reason that even something like physical death can be hard for Geminis, because, you want everything to be about, life and youth. I mean, think about your sign. Of course, I'm talking about the Northern Hemisphere, but the midsummer kind of a vibe. The late spring and early summer, everything is alive then. And that kind of mimics the spirit of a Gemini person. Change is something that is inevitable in life, and that's what this card represents. And how do you navigate that? whatever this transformation or change is. In the past position, we have the High Priestess. And one thing that I want to say is that you have a lot of energy in that 8th house that I was just talking about. And that could be what this card is all about. That recently could be, within two, 3, even with Pluto, 12 years, that you've had transformational energy in the 8th house that has made you dig deeper. The 8th house is like, Saturn has been there, and Saturn will go back there. Saturn is currently in your 9th house retrograding, and that could be like a test of faith. So going into the 8th house, maybe you've been studying occult information in order to make something tangible from it, like a business. And because that's how I view Saturn a lot of times, is how can I take this and make it into something that I can use for my future? Yeah, I mean, you could say something other than just like practical money making ideas, but still, it could be in that realm as well. And so in July, Saturn will go back into that house and join the party there. But Jupiter is there, and Jupiter is a ruler of the 9th house, so it can be that positive spin on a very heavy kind of an area, or luck kind of expansive energy in this house that expands your life in some way. So the High Priestess is about tuning into your higher self, and perhaps this is something you've been doing recently to prepare for this transformation. And the higher perspective is the Four of Swords. Now, it's very interesting because in a book that I have, they really talk about rest and rejuvenation. But I would say for the mind as well, like a retreat, something where you're not thinking so much. But it's also, the Four of Swords is about order. So getting your mind in divine order, I would think, would be part and parcel of this card. And, how do you get your thoughts in check? Because you are ruled by Mercury. So, I was just reading this book about, it was about prosperity, but it was talking about, how do you meditate, and saying you can't stop your thoughts. Well, I think that is generally the case. I think sometimes people are able to get into a state of consciousness that may be very thoughtless, but regardless, where I was going with that was that I think that the Four of Swords is not just about resting your body, but resting your mind. And so that will help you to get in touch with your higher self, which is what the High Priestess is all about, and therefore navigate the changes in life that may feel a bit challenging to you, that feel like you can't if you have anxiety, for instance, which might run high with some Geminis, thinking too much, being too attached to concepts rather than really embracing what is before you. Because, truth be told, this is a situation where a lot of times our suffering is because of the stories we tell about certain things that are going on. And the more that we're able to see the bigger picture, that's how we're able to embrace the change. So I can see a lot of Geminis who are associated with change still feeling anxiety when they're faced with it, because they don't know exactly, what is going to happen in this particular situation. How can I deal with this in a way that doesn't drive me crazy? And And if you have been the kind of person who just cannot stand any longer the kind of dog-eat-dog work environment that you're in, I mean, we do have this as the challenge card. This is a card that is associated with competition, but in the same book that I was speaking of earlier, they also talk about a friendly competition. So you may be like someone who knows that it's time to transition into a spiritual profession. If you are somebody who is really wanting to be a healer or a psychic or something like that, Gemini, but you love whatever it is that you do, there may be this part of yourself that loves being in the midst of that drama or that kind of, it's a high-paced environment. It may feel like, it may feel like death to go into something that's more quiet, that's quieter, because you feed off of that, you might feed off of that competitive energy in some way. And that is okay. You know, I think transitions are always something, like I said at the beginning, they can be gradual. They're not always going to be instantaneous. And so perhaps that was it. To me, though, there's in not Buddhism, in I guess you'd say yoga, but I think it's associated with Hinduism. They have the modes of nature, I think they call them, but one of them is the mode of passion. So I see the Five of Wands as the mode of passion. There's a mode of goodness, sattvic, and that is the peace that I associate with the High Priestess. Be still and know. And isn't that interesting? Because Gemini wants to know, that insatiable curiosity. But it can't just be mundane knowledge. It has to be knowledge or wisdom that can navigate immaterial areas of life, not just the material world. Speaking of the material world, what's coming in is Knight of Pentacles. You may have this gung-ho attitude about, you know, working, I was going to say shop until you drop, but this is like work until you twerk. But, you know, this idea of if you are in transition for professions, Gemini, let me see, what's your 10th house? Virgo? Well, I mean, it's not like really being hit hard, unless you're talking about the opposition from the 4th house with Neptune in Pisces. I'm not really sure how that would, I'm sorry, my bad. Neptune is in your 10th house. I was going backwards. So yes, perfect. Because Neptune is in its own sign of Pisces. Pisces is your 10th house. Now I'm generalizing here. And so that can give you more of a spiritual bent of wanting a spiritual career, Gemini. But also it can give you this sense of being kind of confused about who you are in the world. That's your identity in the world. Like your reputation is your 10th house. But who are you at this time? So for some of you, this is a midlife crisis where you always had this sense of self, and then all of a sudden, I don't know exactly when Neptune went into Pisces, maybe 2012 or so. All of a sudden, so maybe about 9 years ago, you kind of started questioning things. And for younger people, this can be the time when you are coming into, you know, if you graduated college, or even if you graduated high school and you're like, what now? You know that you don't want to go to college, but you don't necessarily want to study a trade. There may be something spiritual that really grabs you, and yet it wasn't your major, or wasn't where you got a degree in. It wasn't something you had planned on. or if you're somebody who, because Gemini is intellectual, so you may have assumed you were going to become a teacher or you're going to become a writer or something like that, and you just are really influenced by the spiritual side of life. So with the 8th house, with the all that stuff happening, and now you got I'm talking about the 10th house with Neptune. Yeah, I could totally see that. So you might be, this is a very practical card. It's associated with Taurus, the Knight of Pentacles. So it can be like, you know what, I'm going to store all my acorns for, I'm going to work for my acorns, and then I'm going to do my own thing. So that very diligent work ethic, making that money. Now, if your Mars is in Taurus, Gemini, which it could very well be, this is second nature to you. You have this ability. You tend to be like this anyhow. But this will just kind of double down with people like you. And then the outcome is a great card, the Chariot. Now, the Chariot is connected to Cancer, so if we're looking at timing issues, in June there's a solar eclipse in your second house of earned income. 0 degrees, baby. So that is like a blank slate for you to set intentions for your financial abundance in the money that you make. But this is a card of victory. This is being able to keep your eyes on the prize. How easy is it for Geminis to keep their eyes on the prize? Very difficult, because you probably tend to be ADD, whether you've been diagnosed or not. You just are very, multitasking, you're associated with doing a bunch of things at once. So that 4 of Swords, whatever that means to you, meditation, a literal retreat, something to get yourself centered, staying away from excessive internet, social media, to keep your mind quiet so that you can, listen to, the High Priestess. You can listen to your higher self, which has so much wisdom to offer, but also ideas that may bear fruit later this year, maybe even sooner than we think. Because you might be feeling that eclipse now, a month earlier. Who knows? Okay, that's what I have for you, Gemini. I really like this reading. If you would like for your solar return to actually look at the literal chart, if you're watching this for the sun in Gemini, what is your rising sign? The rising sign creates your natal chart. You could have your first house could be totally different than Gemini. It could be, Capricorn. Who knows? So I would love to read for you. Check me out at rainamoonastrology.com. The link to my offerings are below. Have a great month, or rest of the month, I should say. Time is an illusion, but thank you for watching. Take care. Bye.